Hey wild listeners, I'm so excited to share this episode with you, a little trip down memory lane for sure. Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the wild and you want more content, check out our Patreon. We've got loads of extras, including a fun chatty series I've got going with my friend Ken about the behind the scenes making of the wild. There's a link to Patreon in the show notes. Okay, enjoy the show. I found this small box of audio cassettes in my attic not long ago, and even just the sound and smell and feel of the cassettes, it was so nostalgic, and I literally dusted off my old stereo to play it on.
The noise you can hear is a wiener outside our tent.
And to have all these sounds from my past come out, it was so surreal.
We're now on the island of Canea. We came over yesterday at low tide when you can get across the water.
This one's a recording I made in 1994, and on the case it says Outer Hebrides, Scotland.
At 6 o'clock this morning, we were woken.
I remember waking up in the morning, and it felt like there was a warm body next to me. I roll over, and sure enough, there's this little seal.
You can hear him scratching the outside of the tent.
It stretched down half the length of my body, and it was lying right outside my tent, right against my arm and the side of my body.
Oh, he's got his face up here now. His whiskers are pressed against the side of the tent so you can see them silhouetted. What a nutter.
And I reached for my little Sony Walkman type recorder and the little microphone stuck on the end of it, and put it right next to its mouth.
Mouth agape there. Showing me his teeth. Ooh, sharp teeth you've got. What sharp teeth you've got.
And while I was there, I just thought, I'm going to record these. And it's the sounds of the place and the feelings and the seals.
They seem to love putting their heads in holes.
And it started off with sending those tapes to my mum and dad. They loved living vicariously through my adventures and hearing about what my life was all about.
He's at the other window now, rolling on his back.
I was a young biologist cutting my teeth and trying to get experience with a professor from the university where I was taking my master's degree. His name was Professor Sean Twiss. Sean hired me to work on his project on grey seals on these little islands in the Atlantic off the coast of Scotland.
His head's right in the tent now through this window. He's about 6 inches away from me. This one is just so calm, I can look right into his eyes. Just the cutest brown eyes. Let's give him a big scratch.
So as I'm listening to this tape, of course I'm thinking about the experiences that really shaped my life when I was a young ecologist. I was 25 years old in this old cassette tape that's 3 decades old. And I'm still that guy. I'm still nostalgic and curious, and I haven't spoken to my old professor, Sean Twiss, since then. And I kind of want to know, how does he remember the experience of October 1994? And what's he learned about the seals since then? So today, we head back to the Scottish Outer Hebrides Islands, surrounded by these beautiful Atlantic grey seals. And I tracked down my old professor to relive the memories together. So yeah, from KUOW in Seattle and Chris Morgan Wildlife, welcome to the wild.
It's Wednesday the 19th of October 1994 and it's a full moon tonight. I'm on the Monarch Islands, a series of about 3 or 4 islands. The Atlantic Ocean lies to my right and I've had a hard time finding somewhere that's actually still enough to try and do some recording. So I'm sheltering in my jacket with the microphone tucked under my arm, and hopefully it's not too bad.
So I went to Durham University in the northeast of England, beautiful city in the northeastern corner of England, to do my master's degree. And so while I was there, I did research on red squirrels, an endangered species in England. And that was coming to an end. And one of my profs, Dr Sean Twiss, a lovely guy, obsessed with seals, well, this amazing opportunity came up with him to help him on some field research. And I was really excited. And here we are 32 years later, and these audio cassettes that I've dug out, they just make me want to call him. I honestly don't even know if he's still alive or still at Durham University, but my producer Matt finds him and sets up this Zoom call.
Hello?
Professor Twiss!
Amazing to see you.
Amazing to see you too, mate. How are you?
Fine, same as always. You haven't changed one iota.
You haven't either. I'd known for the whole time I was at Durham that he was doing this Atlantic grey seal work, and it sounded really enticing and interesting. And we got to know each other, and we got along well. And one day I remember Sean just saying, "Hey, sounds like you might be interested in something I'm doing." And it was this work that he was doing in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, these tiny little islands with these seals that come back every year, 5,000 to 10,000 seals coming back every year to these tiny islands where he could study their behaviour. And it immediately caught my attention.
I think you just came up to me and asked if there's any opportunities to get some field experience. And I looked you in the eye and thought, yeah, here's someone who looks like they can do the job. And that
He looks heavy. He looks heavy. That's the way I told the story. You just needed some heavyweight to do the grunt work.
Well, given that you are about a foot taller than me, it was certainly handy having someone who could lift all the heavy kit.
Do you remember I was recording while we were out there? Do you remember that? I had a little Sony Walkman recorder.
I vaguely recall that, yes.
So I dusted those tapes off a few weeks ago. And Matt, my producer, is going to play us some of those tapes for you now, so we can listen to them together.
I dread to think what I was saying back then.
It's dusk in the Outer Hebrides, and I've got 6 faces peering at me from the sea here. I'm sitting in a bay. It's 6:45 at night, and these guys are just peering at me, just their heads above the water, glaring towards me in the fading light. They're Atlantic grey seals, and they're the guys that we're here to study.
I think the highest point on the Monarch Isles is 8 metres above sea level.
There weren't many mountains, I remember.
No.
I think people picture Scotland as vast and mountained, but it wasn't that at all, was it? It would blow a bloody gale, if I remember rightly, right? I mean, because of that.
And it's not too bad. As far as Hebridean weather goes, there's about a gale force, probably 4 or 5 at the moment. It's forecast for 8. Yesterday it was more like a 9. So it's been pretty rough, but it's by no means the worst we've had. And it's a sort of dull, overcast evening.
This low-lying, sandy island that faces out towards the Atlantic, and there's nothing between it and North America. It's just amazing. The light you get, particularly, as you said, at dusk in the Outer Hebrides, shining over those low-lying islands as the sun is setting. There's just something very unique and magical about it. I've never seen a light like that anywhere else.
I don't know whether it's the wildlife that comes alive at this time of the evening. With the fading light, the birds seem to be out, and we saw a flock of mute swans flying over earlier on. Hundreds of barnacle geese. There's seals all around.
In the UK, where wilderness is a rarity, and to be surrounded by the seals during the breeding season when they're all singing and howling and doing their thing, it's nothing short of magical. You could just sit there forever and soak it up, frankly.
Oh, that's beautiful. You just totally took me back there. And the singing, I've never heard it described as singing, but you're right. I've listened to some of the tape this week, and it does sound like that, doesn't it? It's eerie and melancholic and joyful and everything. It's a very interesting sound.
That's the one from earlier that was following that one, isn't it?
These seals in the UK breed during the autumn. What we were trying to do, as we said, was kind of map these seals, and we were doing that on a daily basis, mapping them, which we then put into a geographical information system to enable us to sort of measure that spatial distribution and how it related to the habitat, the topography.
We're just heading into the study area from the study beach.
One of my jobs was to literally take a clipboard around and go and count seals. How many males, how many females, how many pups, which beaches were they on.
This is a big guy. And he doesn't like me. On his patch. Huge Roman nose on him.
Just an absolute heaven as a young ecologist, honestly. Out there, on my own in this case. Clipboard in hand, pencil behind the ear, and I would pull out my recorder at times like that and just sort of reflect on what I was seeing and experiencing.
Several scars around his nose as well from fighting with other males. And all over the back of his body, actually. He's sort of half immersed in this rock pool here, keeping his eyes on me.
And we were working with animals that, what do they weigh in?
Oh, crikey, you're on US terms here. So, yeah, the typical female's around 180 to 200 kilograms, but the males can get up to 300 kilograms or so.
It's this giant of a creature. I mean, these things are 550, 600 pounds in weight.
They're surprisingly agile, actually. When you see them fighting each other, the males, it's just incredible, so got to be quite careful.
And their reaction to you is vivid, right? Because they don't want you there. They're in this competitive male mating mindset. That's all that's on their mind. So anything that gets in their way, they're not happy to see. So they make a lot of noise.
You can probably hear his breathing. His nostrils just above the water. His huge whiskers about 4 or 5 inches long. Tree under the water. A real musky smell about it. You can smell this miles away if you're actually downwind from the male. Real distinctive odour. And our equipment smells of it all the time.
So there are seals everywhere, thousands of them. And the only way for Sean to understand all the complex social dynamics and who's related to who and why the seals are behaving the way they do is to catch them, to take DNA blood samples, which is easy with pups, but not so much with the giant adults. For those people who've never caught a seal before, how do you do that?
We use a blowpipe with a dart to dart the female with a sedative drug, and then you just back off for 10 minutes or so until the seal succumbs to the sedative.
Pups all around.
You stay there outside.
Okay. Right, Sean's going to try and herd her down towards me, and I'm going to try and thrust it over her as she comes round, hopefully. And here she comes. You can perhaps hear her.
And then we can approach her again, but with this device we call a pole net, which is basically a seal-sized net between two poles, which we can then place over the seal's head and over her body.
I'm going to move in behind her and try and sneak this over. Okay. Oh, no.
And once we've captured them with this net, then we begin this process of taking blood DNA samples so that Sean can take it to the next level and understand who's related to who and why the seals are behaving the way that they were. It was the most amazing experience being close to these animals, but must have looked like a bizarre scene to the Scottish fishermen out on the horizon watching us.
Sand everywhere. All over the seal, all over the equipment, all over our hands.
It was physical work. I remember being very out of breath trying this and following your directions but what I was always impressed with was how you wanted to really make sure that the seals well-being was the first thing in your mind. And when it didn't make sense for us to capture a particular animal, you'd walk away and like, nope, not today, not doing this. And yeah, it stuck with me.
I mean, it has to be the sort of be-all and end-all, because, again, we're trying to find out what these animals do naturally, and anything that we do that interferes with that natural behaviour is going to mess up what we find out, essentially. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep the animals in as natural situation as possible.
That's the male you can hear. Blowing his snout in the water.
The seals breed on these beautiful, gorgeous sandy beaches that stretch the length of this series of 5 islands that make up the sort of archipelago. That affects their distribution, and that consequently affects their behaviour, which is really the essence of what we're trying to find out, how that sort of fine-scale habitat and topography influences distribution and behaviour and the resulting outcome, if you like, in terms of mating success for males and who the females get to choose to mate with as well.
And in simple terms, how those things, the topography, so the lie of the land kind of thing, and other things, how would they affect the mating behaviour of a male seal? How would that work?
To use a glib example, when you go home at night, you go in through the front door, you don't climb in through the window, and you walk round your sofa, you don't climb over your sofa normally. So quite small habitat features influence your behaviour, essentially. And it's really the same.
Habitat features like a couch. Yeah. I love that description. I'm going to use that. Yes. Sorry, go on.
And it's just the same in the natural world. Every sort of second-to-second decision an animal is making is influenced by what's around it, and that includes that sort of fine-scale topography. What's the easiest route to take from A to B? What's the best patch of ground in order to do what I want to do? In this case, it's give birth to my pup. And that influences who's next to who and how clustered individuals are or how widespread they are. Now, if the females giving birth to their pup are clustered around a key feature, say a pool of water, that makes it easy for a dominant male to control access to that group of females and try and secure mating rights to them. So that tends to make the whole system more skewed in that some males, the dominant males, get lots of mating opportunities and other males are excluded. Whereas if the females are more widely dispersed and not clustered around key features, so similar to what we saw on the Monarch Isles, where they're on these open sandy beaches and spread out fairly evenly across it, then that makes it harder for individual males to control access to the females because they're not in a nice, convenient group. That means more males can get in. It means the females have more choice about who they mate with as well. And therefore, the mating success is spread more evenly across the males. So the variation in success is less extreme, and that affects the evolutionary trajectory of the population, essentially, because you've got more males contributing to the next generation genetically.
Wow, I love that description. You've taught me so much more than I remember from being back there 30 years ago, because it was like survival for us in some ways, wasn't it? Almost, just like getting by day to day. But the big picture reminder is just wonderful there. I just love it, because I remember some of those beaches, long, like half a mile long, beautiful yellow sandy beaches, turquoise water at times, like the Bahamas, isn't it? Just gorgeous and flat, and the grasses. And so you're saying that flat sort of topography, that flat ground, that was, it enabled more males to have a chance at mating than they would in hillier country.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So does that genetic diversity, because more of those males are mating, mean that population's perhaps like healthier? Is that something you look at?
I don't know about healthier, but potentially more resilient in terms of genetic diversity, yeah.
Okay, right. Resilient to
whatever perturbations life throws at natural systems, really. And as we're well aware, there's plenty of that through rapid environmental change and anthropogenic impacts. With a greater biodiversity within populations, you have a chance that you're going to have some individuals that are able to cope with whatever life throws at them, essentially.
I've just come for a walk outside of our base, which is an old schoolhouse from the 1900s, early 1900s, on the Isle of Canir, which is part of the Monarch Isles.
So in the schoolhouse, I remember when we first got there, it was windy and wild. The roof is broken and letting all kinds of weather and wind and rain in. The walls, big old stone walls, were dilapidated and falling down in places. So one of the first things we had to do was board up the holes in the windows and put tarps on the roof and find warm enough corners of the building to actually sleep in and take shelter.
You're out in the field all day till dusk, and it is hard work. And you come back to this battered old building, which provides you with shelter.
And I've just been collecting firewood, driftwood, and netting, and old ropes from the fishing vessels that have passed by here. It's great for getting the fires going. So I'm about to head back to base now and see what's going on and see if anyone started the cooking.
When you're outside, any food tastes brilliant, and I'm sure what we ate was not necessarily the best food. It all came out of tins one way or another. It was filling, and with a glass of whiskey, even better. And you've got the warmth of the fire, you've got the food in your belly, and you've got good company, telling each other stories, jokes.
Come not between the Nazgul and his prey. Oh, he will not slay thee in thy turn. He will bear thee away to the houses of lamentation, beyond all darkness. There thy flesh shall be devoured, and thy shriveled mind be left naked to the lidless eye.
What is that a quote from? I'm ashamed I don't know.
That is from Lord of the Rings. So
perfect.
That's the Nazgul talking to Eowyn. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sky radio, sky radio, sky radio. He says, Monnet space, Monnet space, Monnet space. Over.
Our only contact with the outside world was through our VHF radio, and it just always reminded me, the sound of that radio and using that radio, how isolated we were and how isolated the seals were in this place that was their home.
Good evening, Sky Radio. We'd like to place a couple of link calls if possible. Over.
I even had a short radio chat with my mum at one point, patched through to my folks' landline.
Some more that you've got to say, over.
Well, nothing much, just to let you know that everything's going okay, but it's a brilliant place, awe-inspiring, it's really good.
What sort of things are you eating, over?
Well, I just had a brilliant stew that Mary's made, and we've got tons of tinned foods and pasta and rice and everything, so we're doing okay. I think we've got to stop for a year here, so if we get stuck, we'll be okay, no problem at all.
Of course, she's making sure I'm staying warm and eating enough like any good mum. And we'd have the crackle of the VHF radio over the crackle of the fire. And there was something very soothing about the weather forecast. This old sound of the voice and the gale force winds in this part of Scotland or this part of the Atlantic or the North Sea.
The general synopsis at midday. Low 50 miles west of Shannon, 974. Expected Shannon 980 by midday tomorrow.
And I just remember it sounding soothing because it was the sound of civilization back on the mainland. And it was all part of this grand adventure that I couldn't get enough of in my 20s. I still can't. But in my 20s, it was just off the charts, the craving for this kind of out there adventure where you felt like everything was on the edge. Coming up, I ask Sean what he's found out about Atlantic grey seals over the last 30 plus years on the Monarch Isles and elsewhere. And we talk about seal mums and those young seal pups that, of course, are infatuated by them. Hey listeners, before we get back to the episode, I want to quickly name some of the folks from our Patreon community who've been behind the wild for years now. Thank you to Laurie O, Gary K, LB, Sil JR, Bryn O and Barbara S. I appreciate each and every one of you. You can join them by going to Patreon and searching for Chris Morgan Wildlife, or there's a link in the show notes. Okay, back to the seals. Can you just describe a little bit of what the seals are doing each October on these islands? They don't live there all year, do they? It's a very seasonal thing. October's a special time. So just sort of, what are they up to?
That's one of the beauties of seals in general. Grey seals are a classic example of them in that they have this remarkable duality to their life. They are marine mammals and they find their food at sea, and they'll dive deep at sea, spend most of the year foraging out at sea, storing up energy in the form of this thick layer of blubber. But because they're mammals, they still have to come on land to give birth to their pups. So the females build up this thick layer of blubber, which is about 5 centimeters thick, wrapped around their body. They'll haul themselves up onto these islands, which are in a way traditional to them. They tend to come back to the same island year after year, and even the same few square meters of land. They're that site faithful. They come onto the island, they'll give birth to their pup, just one pup a year, and raise that pup using this thick layer of blubber that they built up whilst they've been out at sea to produce the fat-rich milk that they will feed to their pup and to fuel themselves, their own energy demands, whilst they're looking after the pup.
I'm just sitting quietly on the beach here with all the stage 1 and 2 pups around me. There's a couple or 3 females in front of me. One of them suckling her stage 3 or 4 pup at the moment. I just watched another one fend off a weaner away from her pup. The ones you can hear crying are the younger ones.
I remember you teaching us about the stages. What are these stages of the pups? Just in brief, can you run through like what those stages are?
Yeah, so there's 5 developmental stages. So it's based on the appearance and the relative size of the pups, essentially. And it's kind of a shorthand way of guesstimating the age of a pup. Stage 1 pups is basically a newborn pup in the first 2 to 3 days of life. And as you said, they're tiny, 16 to 20 kilos. They've got this white coat, this lanugo that they're born with, and the pup is quite uncoordinated, not great at moving itself around.
The crying you can hear in the background is a stage 1 pup with a couple of sort of stage 4, stage 5 pups next to it. It's crying and looks like it's lost its mother, but she'll be back as soon as we're off the beach.
But then as the mum feeds the pup with this fat-rich milk, it soon starts to fill out a bit and get more coordinated and active. So from that sort of 3-day period to about a week old, 7 days is what we call a stage 2. They've still got the white coat. We're starting to lose some of those loose folds of skin, but we can still clearly see a distinct head and shoulders and neck. So that's what we call a stage 2 pup. But then, as they keep on feeding on this fat-rich milk, they move into stage 3, which
is that when their neck disappears?
That's when their neck disappears, and they're just basically a barrel, and some of them have put on so much fat, so much blubber that their foreflippers, their short, stubby foreflippers, don't actually touch the ground.
Now you're a proper seal. Yes.
Yeah. So they're actually doing really well. But they've still got this white coat. So that's what we call a stage 3. And that will go through to about 2 weeks of age. Then around about day 14, 15, 16 from being born, they start to shed this white coat and it comes off in sort of patches. So that's what we call a stage 4, which is quite a short period where they're shedding that white coat and revealing the first sort of adult coat, the sort of dark and light grey blotchy coat that's typical of a grey seal. The mother basically has 2 jobs to do, really. One is to pump as much of this fat-rich milk, which is about 60% fat content, into the pup as possible, and to protect the pup from harm. The pups nurse on this milk for about 18 days, after which the mother says, right, job done, I'm off, I'm going back to sea. During that 18-day period, the mum, when she arrives, could be 180, 200 kilograms. After the 18 days of provisioning this fat-rich milk, she could be half that weight. She was certainly down to 100 kilograms. So she literally shrinks before your eyes over this 18-day period. The pup, by contrast, balloons, expands. So a pup when they're newborn is about 20 kilos. After this 18-day period of feeding on this fat-rich milk, when they're weaned, when the mum says, right, you've had your lot, I'm off, the pup can be anywhere between about 40, 50, 60, or even 70 kilos over that 18-day period. So it's just remarkable watching the mum shrink and the pup expand over this period.
Right.
Yeah.
Very highly correlated on
Yeah.
the graph, right? The smaller mum gets, the bigger the pup gets.
That's it.
I always felt sorry for the weaners. I don't know if you felt the same way, but it felt like they were just suddenly out on their own, these weaners. And a weaner being a pup that has finished nursing, but all it's known is that delicious full-fat milk from mum for several weeks. And then suddenly mum turns on it. It's like, you're out on your own now. It's time for me to mate again. So these weaners are just kind of looking a little bit lost on the beach.
The noise you can hear is a weaner outside our tent. We're now on the island of Cania. We came over yesterday at low tide when you can get across the water, and we've set up camp just to tag a few pups here and see what the situation is. And there seem to be seals right across the island at 6 o'clock this morning. We were woken, as you can perhaps hear, by this weaner, which decided to poke its head through one of our windows. They're sort of circular windows with a drawstring middle, so the hole in the middle can be made large or small, and it poked its nose through, so we made it a little bit larger, until eventually its whole head was through this tent window. And often the mothers will scratch at the flanks of the pup, especially to sort of encourage it to feed, and that's the noise that the weaner has been making on the side of the tent here. It's been sort of scratching with its paws, a sort of that sort of a noise, you know. But often we've seen different weaners around the islands cuddled up to something, and you think it was automatically sort of to do with finding shelter, but it could be something to do with actually being a substitute for the female, for the mother.
Do you think I was right? Is there anything to that? Do you think that weaner looked at the tent? It was grey as well, I think. Do you think it thought it was a mum substitute?
Absolutely.
Huh.
They're robust individuals. Shelter, I don't think, would explain it. They're really drawn to sort of, kind of, to put it bluntly, large rotund objects in the environment, be that a tent,
like mama.
yeah, an old fuel container from a seaplane, or logs lying on the beach.
And he's been hanging around all day, and he seems to have adopted our tent as its mother, because these weaners must obviously feel a loss once their mothers leave them, and they sort of look for substitutes.
And I think there is that social element to it. And again, that's something we've shown with our research, that these seals are far more socially complex than used to be thought.
Earlier on this morning I was tugging at his whiskers and scratching him under the chin, and he just doesn't seem to mind. He seems to love it. Bit of attention that I think they miss at this stage.
It really is a privilege to do this kind of work and to be in places like that, surrounded by, these other, for want of a better word, sentient beings, that are different to us. For that reason, in some ways, more fascinating to me. And I think what you illustrated there is, again, going back to this idea of individuality. Some of those pups are really inquisitive. Yeah, and they stick their noses into everything. Others are not. Others are shy. And again, you can imagine the different advantages or disadvantages of those different personalities, for want of a better word, as they go to sea as adults. These inquisitive seals are going to get to the place where the resources are, the food, first, but at the risk of sticking their noses in a fishing net, because they think there might be food there. The shyer individuals, will be slower to get to where the food is, but they're not going to put themselves at risk so much. So there's again these different ways of living life. You can be bold and risk taking, or shy and more cautious.
I'm so curious. Has anything changed over the last 3 decades in your work? I mean, is there something that you thought you understood back then that you now understand differently?
Because behaviourally, we'd seen that individual seals would come back to that same few square metres of beach year after year, and the males would also tend to come back to the same place. We've kind of expected that the offspring in one year might be essentially siblings of offspring in another year because you've got the same female and the same male in the same location. But what we actually found is that there doesn't seem to be that level of genetic relatedness. And again, I think that seems to go to this idea that the females, whilst they've got the option of mating with the local dominant male, actually also have these sneaky behaviours where they can sneak off and mate with males in adjacent territories or even further afield, then come back to carry on nursing their pup. And that's really interesting because, again, it means that the female is producing a series of pups over the years that have genetic diversity. So she's kind of not putting all her eggs in one basket of always mating with this one dominant male. She's actually producing offspring that have a diversity of genotypes, therefore increasing the chance that some of those are more likely to thrive than others.
I remember going in and you talking about this site fidelity and you trying to figure out, does that mean that these are full brothers and sisters, some of these pups on this beach, some of these seals? And it was a fascinating question to ask because you were hypothesizing, right, that the same seals came back to the same square few feet of beach. So the same seals were mating and then they would give birth to these pups, and over successive years they'd have full brothers and sisters as a result just of the fact that they were coming back to the same square feet of beach. But it sounds like you've blown a hole in one of the hypotheses that you had back then since then. Right. I don't think you knew everything you've just told me back then, did you, about them sneaking off in other bays and things?
That's all work that's emerged over the years because obviously we need to collect data over multiple years. But it's really nice because it's like the females are manipulating the game in a way. They're raising their pup in a location that's kind of secured by a dominant male, which tends to lead to less male-male aggression in that area because most of the other males will avoid that area occupied by the dominant male. So it's quite a peaceful spot to raise your pup, relatively speaking. But, the female's taking her pick of who she actually wants to mate with. It might be the dominant male, but not always.
Each of them seem to differ so much in sort of behaviour and characteristics as well as physical appearance.
It was so interesting to me because, I hadn't spent time around seals, but of course Sean has, and he watches their every movement and behaviour pattern, and he sees things like females using space that's guarded by a dominant male in a way that benefits her that I wouldn't have ever recognised or seen.
It's that diversity of approaches to life, even within a single species, which really fascinates me. What you see in any system is a huge diversity of different ways of going about solving life's challenges and problems that it throws at you. Some of them can be sneaky, some of them can be just dominant, barging in, trying to monopolize the resources. Others are more shy and careful and, taking less risk. And we see across, countless species that we look at, we see this diversity of behavioural types within each species, which I think is actually a really profound thing and an important message for modern day humans as well.
Yes, and we're a little arrogant to think that we're the only species that have all these little nuances in our behaviour through life, aren't we? It's like it's happening all around us, folks. But it takes research like yours to sort of unearth that and uncover all the nuances. It's like science has kind of ignored the fact that individual animals might behave really differently to each other in ways that often do feel human.
It was kind of cast down because it was felt to be anthropomorphic, sort of casting these human attributes onto non-human animals. And it's really in the last 10 to 20 years that science has kind of gathered its feet again and found quantitative ways of measuring individual differences in behaviour that equate to personality and measuring behavioural and physiological aspects that are indicative of different emotional states. So now science is coming back to this, but with new tools, new quantitative and rigorous tools that's building a strong body of evidence that humans aren't alone in expressing emotions and that those emotions are an integral part of how individuals deal with the day-to-day stresses of life.
seals are not just like people with this range of emotions and individuality. It's that humans are just like seals, and they actually evolved long before us, and they've perhaps mastered some of the things that we haven't yet with this individuality and putting it all to use, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the fundamental of it. And again, I think anyone who's acquainted with non-human animals, even if they've got a couple of dogs as pets, they won't need to be convinced of this. They'll know that they're individuals. In a way, it's science that has to be convinced of this.
How old is an old seal? How long do they live?
So a female seal can live up to about 45 years or so, a female grey seal.
What?
And potentially, if they're in good condition, they could have a pup every year from 5 or 6 up to the age of 40, 45.
45 years, not 4 to 5 years, 45 years.
45, yep.
That's blowing me away. How did I not know that? So some of the seals that we were studying then are still going back to those beaches potentially.
Yep.
These seals do live a long time, and it gives them an opportunity to really evolve as individuals. And being on a beach among this many of them, you start to see that.
Hi, it's Sean on the Monarchs here. Phoning you about the possibility of hiring your services for getting us off the islands, over.
Okay.
I remember Sean had to radio several times back to the mainland to convey messages to the people that were going to be picking us up.
Any sort of deadline as to when I would propose it?
Well, it depended. The first one I would expect to arrive in the Monarchs by 1100 hours.
6 straight weeks of pretty intensive field work and, physical every day and looking after yourself and doing the work as well. So by the time that the end comes around, you're ready to leave, but also with that sense of nostalgia and thinking, oh, I'm going to miss this place because it was so special.
Okay, that sounds fine. That fits in perfectly with our plans. It gives us time just to finally close things up here on the morning. The work here has gone great. We've got about 500 samples. Catching the adults was interesting because they're all runners, so we had to catch virtually all of them before we actually drugged them, which was quite entertaining.
I think about the experiences out there all the time, Sean, and I was just very grateful for the incredible experience, and it's so nice to be able to thank you for it here because it affected my life a lot. So thank you.
No need to thank me. What you've done with your license has just been amazing, and makes me really proud that I was a small part in sort of helping you along that way.
But Chris and Mary did well, and did brilliant, and now expert seal catchers. Over.
I'm glad to hear it went well in the end. I'm sure it would have done, so that's great news. But I'll see you on Sunday. Over.
Okay, great. Mine's a pint of Guinness, and
Mine's 4 pints of Guinness.
so we'll see you when I see you.
Nothing like wrapping up a long field season, coming home to a cold beer, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our whiskey supplies must have run out by that stage. So,
yeah. Knowing what you know about me now, would you hire me again?
Absolutely, yes, without a hesitation. It'd be lovely to have you back at a field site playing with seals and just being out there in the wilds.
I'd love that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd absolutely love that.
In a way, it's a shame you're on the opposite side of the pond, but it's not. It's great that you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I mean, the impact you've had, I think, is brilliant. I still use you in my introductory lecture to the first years about what is possible if they've got passion and drive and determination, which you had.
Do you really?
Had in bucket loads. Yep.
Do you really?
Yep.
I'm so floored by that, honestly. That's amazing to hear.
I mean, we talk about our students going into research or education or policy or conservation.
Mm-hmm.
You've done it all, and you're still doing it. So that's brilliant.
Oh, mate, that has just made my day. You've set me up for a good one now. That is incredible to hear. I feel like I'm but hardly scratching the surface of the stuff that I want to do that needs to be done.
Oh, yeah, and you answer one question, you end up with 100 more questions. But in a way, that's good. It's not knowing stuff that drives you on. So.
Well, I just know over the last 30 years that there have been hundreds of students inspired by you like I was as well. And I just want to thank you for it. It was a real formative point in my ecology and conservation career. And I was just so young and naive. And thank you so much for being part of that journey and giving me that opportunity out there. It was amazing. And like I said, it's stuck with me ever since.
Good. Yeah.
31 years later, and here I am. And it's been so lovely revisiting it with you all.
Yep.
Thank you, Sean.
Brilliant. No worries. Thank you. And I'm glad I'm glad the seals left an indelible impression on you.
They totally did. I can still smell them. Brilliant.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. I was talking to Dr. Sean Twiss, who is an associate professor in animal behaviour and behavioural ecology at Durham University in England. Thanks for listening to The Wild. As we prepare for more adventures on our next season, we could use your help. It's a chance for you to tell us what you think about the show and what other stories you'd like to hear. What do you love and what should we do differently? We have a survey linked in the show notes. It'll only take a few minutes to fill out and it would be so helpful to us. Thanks. A special thanks to producer and engineer Bill Simpkins for help with this episode. Bill digitised the tapes of my time among the seals of Scotland. You can learn more about his work at alpenglowsound.com. The Wild is a production of KUOW in Seattle and Chris Morgan Wildlife, with support from Wildlife Media. Matt Martin and Lucy Suchek produced this episode. Jim Gates is our editor. Fact-checking by April Craig. Our theme music is by Michael Parker. Additional music from Music Bed and Blue Dot Sessions. The Wild is hosted, produced and written by me, Chris Morgan. A very special thank you for their kind financial support to Jill and Scott Walker, Rose Letwin, Alan Ferguson, the Isdell family, Anna Kimball, Barbara Stallman, John Taylor, Paul Lister, Bob Yelleries and John and Julie Hanson. Thanks for listening and for being part of the mission that we're on to help people connect with the natural world and with each other. See you next time.